Don't you think it's about time for a podcast that's more fulfilling? One that's about the vibrant exchange of ideas and perspectives that happens when we actually come together. We got you covered. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project, where the depths of conversation meet the waves of personal experience. This is a real, raw, and unscripted show about everything from leadership lessons to self-awareness, wellness, and the latest current events. We cover it all. We have a rotating cast of guests as we share our personal stories, insights, and opinions on the issues that matter most. Plus, we have a blast while doing it. The Deep Blue Project. It's not just a podcast, it's an experience. And now your host, Chris Workman.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Deep Blue Project. I am so happy to welcome Chris Cowan. Cowan, am I pronouncing it correct, Chris?
Yes, sir.
I want to get it right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Chris was a former chief of police of the city of Case in South Carolina, and he is currently the director of strategic initiatives, excellence in policing, and public safety program for the University of South Carolina Joseph Rice School. Hey, Chris, welcome.
Appreciate you having me on. That's what a great opportunity. I'm very humbled that you'd ask me to be on.
So Chris and I got a chance to speak with each other and meet at a conference in Virginia a couple weeks ago, and he was speaking on some topics that I think are very, very important and kind of struck me as a law enforcement leader that I just never thought about. And I think we're going to get into some of what he's doing now and touch base on a little bit of that. So, Chris, you got the floor if you want to give people a little bit of a update on your background and what you're doing now.
Well, I've really been blessed. 32 years in law enforcement, worked for the Richland County Sheriff's Department for 29 years, and then went to the city of Casey to be the police chief. And, just been very blessed. God has blessed me with a lot of opportunities, a lot of support, a lot of mentorship, and friendships in the law enforcement community. And I've really been blessed by that and really super excited about this new opportunity that presented itself. The legislature provided funding to the law school, to the School of Law at the University of South Carolina to create an excellence in policing and public safety program. And the core fundamental principles of the program are to continue to support and provide resources to law enforcement across the state of South Carolina. And what we're doing is we're building curriculum that will be specifically based on, applicable principles, things that we as leaders in law enforcement wish we had 10 or 15 years ago, and trying to create and help build the executive leaders of tomorrow. And it's really exciting, really great opportunity. We have 2 cohorts actually going through the program right now. And it's really kind of unique in a couple of ways. It's unique because roughly 70% of the instruction is not instruction. It is actually class interaction. It is formulating and talking about theories and practical applications and getting the students to really work with each other on real life scenarios and real life issues that can help them be more successful and more significant in their careers. So it's really exciting. And then also we have a psychologist that is actually a PhD. She is on staff and she's an educational psychologist. And what she does is she assesses the curriculum and she also assesses the instructors to ensure that the information that we're providing is digestible, it's accessible and available, and making sure that it's delivered in such a way that people, because of the way our brains work, to make sure people can absorb the information. So 70% of it is interaction. We do 30% of it is instructional. But it's really super exciting because we're developing curriculum that is benefiting emerging leaders and also dealing with emerging threats.
Great. And so this is something that you guys are starting to develop for the leadership and for the policing community in South Carolina.
It is. It's really exciting because it's the excellence in policing and public safety. So the idea is we're looking at, for example, we look at co-production and public safety, and we look at what did community policing teach us? Where are we taking the evolution of community policing, and what are we doing to really develop strong, unified relationships in our communities And how are we dealing with issues like civil rights? How are we dealing with issues like human resources and risk management and ADA and, all of the different things that we as leaders, we didn't really have coming up through the ranks. We tried to attend conferences and we try to attend classes to learn those things, but we need deep-seated training that for executives and emerging executives that can help them build their toolbox. And so the program is we're building resources for law enforcement executives. We're building a support network. We can provide research and research partnerships. We're applying for grants on behalf of agencies to help them to provide additional training and additional resources and support. The program will provide a master's level master's in policing, public safety and police leadership and management, executive police leadership and management, and a graduate certificate. But also, it will be providing executive credentialing. So what will happen is we will be providing additional cohorts and we will be going around to provide this training. So, you know, we go to training and it's usually 5 days or it's 10 days and then we leave and we hope that we've got the information. Our goal is to bring cohorts in. We bring them in for anywhere from 1 day to 2 day to 5 days. And then we send them back to their agency, hopefully with applicable practical skills and that they can apply. And then they come back to us in a month. This cohorts that we have going now, they come back to us every couple of months over 18 months. The next cohorts will probably be running about 6 months. And you'll come for 2 or 3 days a month for 6 months, and you'll receive that practical training, that practical applicable skills. And then you get to go back and you get to apply them. And then you come back to us and you say, hey, this is what worked. This is what didn't work for me. And we can dissect that. We can digest that, and we can support them as they go out and they being successful.
I think that's what's needed. You being in law enforcement for quite a long time, I think that's what we look at. I got a couple more years to go. We'll see how that works out. But I think that that's what we're seeing, right? I mean, the flip over and change in how we approach law enforcement, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, as opposed to how we have to approach it nowadays. I think that that's a good thing that we know that learning has to be continuous.
Absolutely. And listen, law enforcement is a profession. It's a professional service that we're providing to our communities. We exist because of our communities, and we have to make sure that we're providing that professionalism. And the EPS programs, the Excellence in Policing and Public Safety program, is designed to give people additional skills, additional resources, and additional support to help them continue to be professional in their service for the community.
So going from the Richland County Sheriff's Department to the city of Casey, what was that kind of transition for you? I mean, because you're going from a sheriff's agency, I'm guessing, to a traditional law enforcement agency or town agency.
It was interesting for me. So I had a really really blessed opportunity because of what I'm about to say. I had a support network in place. I had people like the Sheriff Leon Lott, who supported me and mentored me and coached me and really provided resource not only when I was at the Sheriff's Department, but also when I went over to the Casey Police Department. Going from a county agency to a municipal agency was a change. It was a transition, but I had a network of support. I had Skip Holbrook, chief of police in the city of Columbia, a mentor, a friend, a support network in place. Chief Greg Mullen, who was in Charleston and then went to Clemson University as in their public safety arena. And I had different mentors and coaches and friends. Chris Watts, the police chief in Rock Hill, and I tell people that is because you can't do it alone. You have to have coaches. You have to have mentors. You have to have friends, people that you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, I don't know what to do in this situation. I've never experienced this before. And you can trust them to give you the information to help you be successful and be significant. They don't have an agenda. Their agenda, well, they do have an agenda. Their agenda is to support you and help guide you and teach you. And so I would tell people that, all the transition, I had Mark Keel, the director of the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, huge mentor, huge support, huge friend, people like that who have double my experience and expertise, who I can rely on to help guide and mold me and the agency into what the community wants. Because really, when it boils down to is what does the community want? And And so, I had that base. And so I would encourage people as you're developing your leadership journey, because it is a journey and it never stops. I'm only as good as the mistakes I've made, and I've made thousands and thousands of mistakes as a leader. And I think that probably the best thing for me was I tried to learn and tried to adapt from those mistakes. But I also had friends and mentors that I could trust to say, hey, Chris, you did it wrong. And this is how you should have done it. Or, hey, let's talk through some different ways you could have handled that better. Or, hey, you really need to pull your bootstraps up and get out there and get in the fight. And so you have to have people, and it's a journey, and that journey will never stop. And you're going to make mistakes. And the only reason that I'm in the position of talking with you today is because I'm honest with people and I tell them, look, I'm not an expert in leadership. I'm an expert in the mistakes of being in leadership itself. And so I humble myself to say that I've made so many mistakes that I've tried to learn from and tried to get people to help me with. So I think to answer your question, it really boils down to the transition. You can make a transition from one unit to another division, from one division to another, command level position, or a command level position to another agency. But what's your network, right? What's your support base, whether that's at home or whether that's professionally. And you have to make sure that you understand, what are your challenges, what are your, everybody calls them weaknesses, I like to call them challenges, and where are your gaps, and where can you get other people to help fill those gaps so you don't fail, because you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And you and I have talked about the murder of Drew Barr, the officer that worked for me. And I only knew the young man for 7 months, but the network that I had around me, the team that we built to be able to deal with that situation, that is no different than the day-to-day grind of the things that we deal with. And you told me about the concert that you're dealing with right now. Your network, your relationships, your partnerships, that's the only way you're going to be successful.
You lead into a fantastic thing. Is what it is all about networking. I think when we learn and when we learn this job, I think growing up or getting into it, there's this ego thing, right? Like unfortunately there's people that just have that ego thing. And we've all touched on it. And I think you said something awesome, is like, I made thousands of mistakes and said I made a choice that was incorrect. I should have went left when I should
Yeah.
have went right. And luckily, they're learning curves. But developing that networking later on in my career and where I am now, and being able to network and reach out with you, and
Yeah.
now you make that connection and you make that friendship. So now that's another person that's in your toolbox that says, hey, I've talked to Chris, I know what he's about. If I needed to ask him something, I can. Or if I needed to ask my
Yeah.
friend Matt, I talk to a lot. That's what this is. I think we're trying to help others, and that's what I'm doing with this podcast, and hoping people listen, and younger people listening that are
Yes.
kind of coming up through the ranks, to go, hey, don't take it from us old guys, like, start that early, build those relationships, and reach out beyond the scope of your own little place. Like, you could be working in the smallest department
Yes.
in the state. You could have one, two people, but you can still, your voice can get out there and you can make those connections.
Yeah, and I would tell you this, for listeners, no matter what your age is, no matter what your age is in your career, wherever you are on your leadership journey, whether it's a police chief, whether it's a sheriff, whether it's a director of public safety, they put their pants on the same way that you do. And don't hesitate to reach out to them. I'll give you an example. Jeffrey Katz, he was the chief in Virginia, in Chesterfield, Virginia. This is a guy that I never met, right? But I watched his career and I thought, I saw him doing different things, and, I started stealing ideas from him. Right. But I also reached out to him. I picked up the phone and I called him, or I sent him a message, and then we talked by phone, and I said, look, I want to pick your brain. I want to learn. And he didn't skip a beat. I'm not at his level. This is a guy that is I think he's got a master's degree, and he's just, to me, he's a great human being. Sheriff Lott's the same way. Anybody can pick up the phone and call him and say, look, I need help or guidance, and they're going to help you. So it doesn't matter where you are in your leadership journey, find people that you can call. And even if you don't know them, they're still doing the same profession. They're still there. They came up through the ranks just like you did. And If they don't give you the time of day, then they're not a mentor. They're not the coach that you want. But I can promise you that they'll respect you for picking up the phone. There's nothing wrong with having ambition to get better and improve yourself. And I love it. This is probably the best question that I've heard recently is, what mistake did you make that you wish you could go back and you could change? And the answer that I heard was none of them. And I thought, wow, well, what do you mean? And because I learned from it, because it's a mistake because you learn from it. And so you're going to make mistakes, right? And what I try to remind people is you're in the right place at the right time for the right reason. And hopefully somebody listening to this podcast is in the right place at the right time for the right reason, listening to the podcast, and will realize you've got something to offer. You're a rock star because you're in the public safety and the policing profession, but don't hesitate to reach out to other people, that the Chris Workmans of the world, the Jeffrey Katz of the world, the Leon Lotts of the world, the Paul Butlers of the world, the different people, that Skip Holbrooks, Mark Keel, people that I've had in my life that I knew I could call on, that were not going to judge me. They weren't going to scold me. They knew that I was on a journey and I was just simply trying to improve.
I think that is very key. And I get the luxury, and I call it a luxury for me, since I started this, to be able to talk to people all the time and to pick their brain. And to me, that's the same thing. Like, I get to do
Yes,
it here and you get to hear it, because all of this is learning for me. I learn from every single person that comes on this podcast. And
that's right.
I get something from all of them, and that's what my hope is that people out there get that from us,
That's right.
and they learn something. We say this, no matter what class we go in or what we've dealt with, because I'm sure you've been in way as many classes as I have, where you sit and you're like, if I can pick one thing out of here and walk away, it was worth it.
That's right.
It
That's
was
right.
100 times worth it. And one of the things that you were talking about, and it's something that I struck my heart, and I think it struck everybody's heart in that room, is when you went to the city of Casey, you had to deal with something that none of us want to deal with. Of us try to think about. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you tell that story.
So, October of 2021, Casey was a public safety agency in September. In October, they divided. So, Casey went through a lot of change. Number one, they divided between a public safety agency. So, they hired a independent fire chief and an independent police chief. I was blessed with the opportunity to be the first police chief. And, the department, then we went through reaccreditation. So, we have another challenge in front of us, right? Well, 7 months in, we have an officer that's murdered, and I'll call it exactly what it is. Drew was murdered in the line of duty. Drew responded to a domestic disturbance. There was a young lady and her daughter inside a home. The man inside the home, he uh, positioned himself on the second floor when we responded to the domestic. There was a friend of his that was over at the house because they had a party at the house the day before. The friend came out and greeted the officers in the yard. Drew exited his vehicle. Drew made contact with the man in the front yard, assuming that man was the person that was involved in the domestic. And as soon as he made contact with an individual, the coward was on the second floor, and he fired a round from his rifle and shot and killed Drew. So we went, fast forward through that domestic situation. Then you fast forward through Drew's murder, the officer trying to get him out of there, to get him to the hospital, to get him treatment. We had then a domestic that's going on. We have a barricaded suspect situation. And the thing for me was, I lived in the same neighborhood that Drew was murdered in. I was asleep at the time. Interestingly enough, the day before, our entire department, we're a smaller agency, so our entire department was at our biggest city event, the soiree on State Street. We were together all day. I went to bed that night with this big smile on my face because I was with these young men and women, professionals, and we worked together throughout the day and throughout the night. Long day. Thought, okay, well, I'm going to go to bed. It's about midnight. I'm going to get some rest. Tomorrow I'll wake up with a big smile on my face because I got to work with all these guys, got to get to know them even better. 2:30, 2:45, I think it was 2:46, whatever the exact time was. Drew was murdered. They tried to call me. I didn't answer my phone. I didn't, and they tried to call me multiple times. I didn't answer my phone. So the sergeant on the shift, he came to the house. He woke me up. And that was that time, that moment in time that'll resonate with me forever, because it was a fight or flight situation. And, it was a situation where I could have, very easily, just try to take time and process it, and then try to, and act, what are we going to do and all that. And I think divine intervention, I think God was there with me. I think that my training and the background that I had and the support base that I had, I knew that I had with Sheriff Lott and Sheriff Coon and Chief Keel and Chief Holbrook, it all kicked in. And in my phone, when I joined the police department, I put all of my officers, and I say mine, they're not mine, they're the city's, but to me, I have personal connection with them. I put them in my phone. I put their home addresses in the phone. I put their spouses or their significant other's phone number and name in my phone. I put their kids, where their kids went to school. I put all that information in. Drew wasn't married. Drew was married to the job. So this is really cool. So he was 14 years old. He joined the fire department as a volunteer. He was a firefighter, he was an EMT, and he was a police officer. This kid was married to the profession. Okay. Keep in mind, when he was killed was 2022. In 2017, he was shot in the line of duty.
Uh,
He returned to full duty, and then fast forward to 2022, he was murdered. And so I think that tells you the character and the caliber that this kid was, right? And the legacy that he left with us. And he didn't leave a legacy; he lived a legacy, which is just amazing to me. And so I tell you all that to say that, one of the things that I think we did right was we immediately had made sure that somebody went straight to his parents' house, picked them up, and brought them to the hospital. We immediately corralled that family. And to this day, we still have corralled that family. And that family has become a part of ours. The presentation that you saw me give at the conference was designed by Drew's mom, by our victims advocate, by the patrol lieutenant that was involved in that incident, by the assistant chief, by about 7 or 8 different people that were involved directly in it. They helped design that presentation. So that wasn't my presentation. And it's important for me to say that, because from the moment things like that happen, forever, you have to make sure that you realize that you can't do it by yourself. And it's not about you as the police chief or the sergeant or the lieutenant or the captain or the assistant chief. And so you've got to make sure that you corral around that family, but you also have to corral around your departmental family. We were blessed because of our relationships. We were able to shut down for a week. So Drew was murdered, and for a week, we didn't operate as a police department. Our communications department, which we have, animal control, park safety, patrol, investigations, victims advocacy, we shut down as a department. Other agencies came in and ran our policing services, and they did it. They did a phenomenal job. But we were able to do that because then we were able to make sure that everybody got together during that week, and we had benchmarks. We had food, because cops love food, right? So we got everybody together, but they didn't have to talk about anything. That they knew there were resources there if they wanted to talk to somebody. And then we set up debriefs, but we also set up debriefs for the family members as well. So we did debriefs during the day for command staff, and we separated out the officers, and then we brought in families that night. And we did that debrief because we wanted to make sure that everybody had factual information, but they could also provide factual information back to us. The other thing I would tell people is that I think that one of the things, the advice that I got from the mentors that were supporting me was, make sure that you put out accurate information, and you put it out quickly, and you put it out decisively. We immediately told our team how Drew was killed, because they needed to know. They needed to know the truth, that he died immediately and how he died. They needed to know that, because they didn't need to speculate, right? And so we did that. And then we did it for the community. And we made sure that everybody knew what was going on. We were factual, and we were accurate in what we did, and in the steps that we took. But keep in mind that we not only had Drew as a victim, we had his family that was a victim. We also had this domestic situation with a mother and a daughter who were victimized that we had to make sure we took care of as well. So it was a lot of moving parts. But I don't get choked up when I talk about it. I get excited when I talk about it, because Drew taught us to be passionate about the profession and to have a purpose. and he taught us to live a legacy, and he taught us to make sure that we took care of our team. And so, it excites me from the standpoint of us being able to talk about it, because as I think I told you at the conference, I was taught a very, very big lesson. I was not saying Drew's name. I was not speaking his name after all things settled down after the funeral. I wasn't talking about him. I thought everybody should move on. We should compartmentalize as cops do. And then somebody told me, they said, if you don't mention his name, he's died twice. And I'd never thought of it that way. And so I honor his legacy. I honor his service. I honor his commitment to community and to policing and to public safety by repeating his name, repeating what happened to him in hopes that it prevents it from happening. But more importantly, making sure that if somebody does go through it, that they can take the information that the team put together about what went on and say, okay, do you have a line of duty death packet? Do you know what your officers want? What do they want in their funeral? I heard a police chief say recently that they had an officer that was killed in the line of duty, and he regrets it to this day. They didn't hold a service for him. And he didn't hold a service because the family was from out of state, and the family did not want anything to do with the department, and they didn't want their child to have anything further to do with the department. And he feels like it was a mistake. But if he had a line of duty death packet that he could have gone to, and he would have known, hey, this is what the officer wants. This is their, do they have a will? Do they have a power of attorney? Where are those documents kept? Where are they housed? Do you have access to them? Do you have a line of duty policy in place? We developed a guide, kind of a playbook, as it were, kind of like a football team uses, to makes assignments for what everybody needs to be doing. You're going to get inundated with emails and food and phone calls and, the whole nine yards. And you got to know how to process that. And the police chief, the assistant chief, the victim's advocate, the patrol, because remember, you have business as usual that's going to come back around. So having that playbook in place, things that we learned from that we could have had in place, beforehand. But we had a support network that's second to none. South Carolina is unique. I'm really, really proud to be in South Carolina. Our federal agencies, our state agencies, our local agencies, everybody works together. There's no territories. There's no line in the sand. We had the FBI, the DEA, the ATF. We had the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. We had the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, Richland County Sheriff's Department. We had agencies from all over the state that were supporting us, and that's something to be proud of. But do you have that network in place? So on your leadership journey, are you taking time to kind of step back and say, okay, where am I if this happens? What am I going to do? Right. And I think for me, that's the thing that I would want to pass off to people that I've been reminded by leaders is if you have that critical incident occur, are you going to be ready for it? And where are you in being ready for it? And you don't have to do it alone. You can pick up the phone and call Chris Workman or Chris Cowan or any number of people and say, hey, look, I'm not prepared if this happens to me, but do you have any suggestions? Absolutely. Maybe we can learn together. Maybe we can learn a new way. Maybe we can invent something that helps some other agency somewhere else in the country or the world.
It's obviously something that we never want to talk about, right? It's not something that we ever want to face. However, I think in listening, and the reason that we're doing this is because, I mean, even me as a leader of a police department, like, you don't want to think about that, but when you sit and you hear this and you get this presentation, you make a great point in the beginning is until that happens, you obviously do not know what is going to what you're going to do, and that networking, that partnership, those relationships you built are going to be key to you surviving that.
Yep. I've heard a lot of people that said they've gone through, they said, Chris, you were blessed because you had a family, Mr. and Mrs. Barr, we call her Mama and Papa Barr. I mean, they're just great people. And, she texts with me, even this last week and check on me. And she loved law enforcement. She loved the department. She loved the city. She loved the community. That was unique because let me tell you, unfortunately, you're going to have an officer just because they're a police officer doesn't mean their family loves law enforcement. And so, you may have a situation where you have a divorcee, where you have your officer who's divorced, maybe is remarried, maybe is not any of that, which is, all that is totally fine. But you have to be prepared of what are you going to do if you're in a situation where you're not getting positive feedback from the family, and how are you going to care for them when they're not wanting help from you? And so you gotta plan for that. You got to plan the plan. I suggest now. I wish we had done it before, but you gotta have a little tabletop exercise. And that first tabletop exercise is getting your command staff together, getting your department staff together, and saying, okay, do you have the resources in place? And the answer is going to be no. So then your next question is going to be, well, what resources, who can I rely on? What relationships do I have outside of the department? And how can I deal with that? And well, there's templates. There's agencies out there that have templates that you can follow, but you've got to get that in place beforehand. Get that line of duty death packet put in place. It's so simple to do. It's all of their emergency contact information, where their kids go to school, where their spouses work, where they go to church, what is their belief system, what is their music preference, all of those different things. And then get a will. And there are attorney firms all throughout this country who will do free wills. And it's not complicated. It's very, very basic. Power of attorney, they will do that as well. They will help you. You don't have to do it by yourself. Get with funeral homes in your area. How is a family going to pay for a funeral that costs $5,000 to $10,000 or $20,000? There are funeral homes throughout this country who will do that for free. They will provide everything, right? But you got to have the relationship in place,
Hmm.
beforehand. I tell people all the time, you can't go to Walmart when you're having a community event the day before the event and say, hey, can I get 6 cases of Coca-Cola and some chips? Well, who are
Right.
you? Right?
Right.
So just be prepared, plan the plan. But it also goes back to, Chris, what we've talked about before, and this is in your leadership journey, is what's your passion and your purpose, right? Where are you in that journey? What's your passion? Who and what are you passionate about? And what's your purpose? What's your direction? What are your goals? What are your objectives? And identify those, because as you're on your leadership journey, those are going to help you define what your mantra is, where you're going, what you're doing, and what you stand for.
Right. And a lot of that comes back to how we kick this off, and that's your people.
Yeah.
That is the employees and the people, no matter where you go, is having that trust and that partnership and those relationships built with the individuals that work with you. I'm not going to
Yes.
say they do for you, because there's times where granted, you have to be the boss sometimes. I mean, let's
Sure.
get that straight. There's times when you got to be the heavy and you don't want to be. But in the grand scheme of things, that's what our job is, right? That's what we do. We have a group of individuals that we're trying to get through this career.
Absolutely. And I think it goes, you can take it a step further. So, for example, when people talk about community that they serve, right? And they say the community, and they're thinking of their whole city or their whole county or their whole state. Well, we have to start looking at it as, who are our customers, right? Who are our clients? Well, we have a church clerical, we have a synagogue, we have a clerical community. That's your customer number one, clerical. Number two, your residential community. Number three, your commercial community. Number four, your academic, your school community. Number five are the criminals. They're your customers. They're still customers, right? So if we look at it from a business model standpoint, we've got these 5 different customer groups that we're trying to serve, and each one of them has to be served differently. But there's a sixth one, and the sixth one is, the clients are your actual team, right? Those, as a police leader, your clients, your customers are those 6 we mentioned, but your clients are your team. You work for them, and you've got to provide services to them. Yeah, but that's just it. To the definition of a client, you're going to be hard on the client sometimes. You're going to hold that client accountable for giving you information and giving you support and giving you the things that you need in order for you to serve them. Accountability and responsibility are the keys, the cornerstone of law enforcement. And it's okay to do that. But you've got to make sure that you're looking at it from a business model standpoint and making sure that as you're on your journey, you're breaking it down into those 6 different categories, in my humble opinion. And I think I learned that the hard way. I was always a transactional leader, right? I was doing the mission, doing the vision, I was checking the boxes, I was being successful, but I was not being transformational and I was not being relational. I was being transactional. And so I think that, transactional and relational are the keys to leadership. But the question and again, I think I failed. I really do. I think that in my journey, I should have been more transformational and more relational, not so transactional.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that the hard way. There's things I want to do, is I want to go back and I want to fix, but I learned from it. So there's no need to go back. There's a need to go forward.
Right. And That's for all of us, and the generation that we were brought up in doing this job and how we were taught. I mean, we
Yeah.
we learned from our leaders, right? We learned from the people who showed us down the road. That's what we were brought up in. We were there as, go, 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 do the mission. It's all about the mission. It's all about getting done what you need to do. It's like, look at this. This is what's happening right now. Hit it head on and
Yeah.
and fix it. And you know what? If something happens or something goes wrong, you know what? Just plow through it. And unfortunately, that plow through it was what we had. So it took us years and years. It's taken me years and years. It's taken me till I finally got to the point where I am at today and doing this podcast to go, hey, you know what? I'm 55. I'll be 56 tomorrow. you know,
Are you
I
really?
just learned. I
Man, come
just
on. You don't look
learned.
a day over 50. Come on,
Yeah,
brother.
I'm like, I just learned. It just kicked me in the head in the last recent
Yeah,
few years to go, hey, build these relationships like you're learning. Learn that it wasn't like you didn't know the right way the entire time. You
that's right.
stumbled, you fell, you did dumb stuff. I mean, and you were there was times when you were the boss or the screamer and you shouldn't have been. And there's times when you should have been the screamer and you weren't.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so we learn that and we get to that point and go, okay, my leadership, just like you hit the nail right on the head with it. My leadership had to change, especially with now
Yeah.
and the way the generations have changed and the way they're learning and the way they want to do things, like that has to all change.
Well, we have
So
to evolve. We have to evolve, and we have to evolve as a profession. In law enforcement as a whole. And that's one of the things that the excellence in policing and public safety program is we're talking about is organizational change management. It's police leadership and management, but it's also looking at it from you know from that relational leadership to transactional leadership to transformational leadership to servant leadership. Those buzzwords that we've all heard, but what do they really mean? And I think I was challenged recently to think about what are we doing to introspect, interflect, look inside ourselves, and take moments in time and look at our interactions and what are we doing to how are we benefiting people in those micro moments like you talked about. You walk out of the squad room and somebody's doing something stupid and hunt the good. Just because they did something stupid, they, if you want them to repeat the bad, then go ahead and draw attention to the bad. If you hunt the good, they're going to repeat the good. It's no different than training. If we train muscle memory in a positive way, people are going to repeat that in those critical situations. It's no different than leadership. It's no different than corrective action. If you want somebody to correct their action, hunt the good and focus on the good that they do. Don't repeat the bad. They know what they did,
right,
right? Move on from that and get them to thinking, and it's changing that psychological mindset, that the way that we think about things.
right. Now, I think that's a great way to put it because we need to see that change. Otherwise, we're going to falter, and especially in smaller agencies, we're having that issue now. And I don't want to go down the recruit and retention path because that could take another hour and a half. So,
Sure.
but that that part of leadership, and I know we've been all over the place today, and we kind of touched on a lot of things, and that's just because that's how we do that here. Like we go where the conversation kind of leads us, and we try to touch on things that hopefully make you go, just take that second, just that 1 second that you might hear a bit of each section and go, wow, I never thought of that. Or you may in another section go, you know what? Yeah, I've been doing that. I've been that person. Well, maybe I should be looking into, you know,
Right.
what you said, hunting the good instead of putting exclamation on the bad. And that's where we try to do this. And that's why leaders such as Chris and other people that we have here, that's why they come on here. They're taking their time. They come on here to give you some information, and hopefully it helps you to kind of not go down the same way we did or think about
Yeah.
it. If
Please
you're
don't
at
make the
that
same
point,
mistakes.
yeah, please don't do it, because that's why we're here, is to try to tell people don't make the same mistakes we did. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the whole purpose. And Chris, I thank you very much, my friend, for coming out today. I know you're a very busy man, but I
What an
enjoy
honor.
I enjoy having you here. I enjoy having you here, and hopefully somewhere down the line, I think we'll kind of touch base again. Um, you have any closing remarks for everyone?
Just thank you for having me on, and really it's just an honor and a privilege to be with you. And I would just repeat, look, don't do it by yourself. You don't have to do it by yourself. There are so many good people out there that'll support you, and God's put you in the right place at the right time for the right reasons, and because he doesn't make mistakes. Just find your passion, find your purpose, and drive on. And if you want to talk about a mistake that you've made, I know Chris or I would be happy to talk through it with you, but I bet it's not as big as the mistakes that we've made.
Yeah.
So I've made a lot of them myself, but I'm humbled by the opportunity and just thankful for you doing this. It's really what a great way for people to learn. And again, I learned when I was on with you tonight. So it's a great opportunity.
That's the key, right? We all learn from each other. So learn from each other, and learn to ask questions. I mean,
Absolutely.
people are out there to help you, whether you believe it or not. Just you have to make that step. You have to reach
That's right.
out. So you can reach any of us on LinkedIn. Chris is on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sure you can reach him at the University of
Absolutely.
South Carolina. Always willing to help. Always willing to lead. If I don't know it, hey, there's enough people out there. I can lead you in the direction of people who are fantastic. There's people that have been on this podcast that every time we end, even Chris right now, like every time we end one of these, they're like, call us, reach out.
That's right.
They're willing to help because we have to pay it forward. That's what we do. People have helped us, we help you. And that's the
Absolutely.
way it goes. So, my friend, I wish you the best. I thank you for coming on today. And
Thank
I
you.
look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
You've been listening to the Deep Blue Project. As a father, husband, friend, and someone who loves to chat about anything and everything, Chris brings over 3 decades of public service experience to the table. With a background in firefighting and law enforcement, along with degrees in criminal justice and behavioral science, he's seen it all, and he's learned a thing or two along the way. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and X at Deep Blue Project. Find our website at deepblueproject.com. And to reach out, send an email to deepblueproject@outlook.com. Keep keeping it real, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Blue Project.